Hello, everybody. Welcome to week 5 of Catalyzing Action in Complex Systems. This week is on mapping and tapping polarities. And I want to just say how much fun it was to watch you working through your systems map in the last couple of weeks. And it really felt like you were getting a handle on it and you were diving quite deeply. And I also apologize for sometimes being a little bit slow last week with having a little bit of limited access to internet, but it was amazing to see how much you were helping each other um, and yeah, really engaging each other's maps and thinking about the archetypes together and thinking about the leverage points. So um, anyway, it feels like a really rich and alive discussion that can continue if questions still are there. And so this week we're really uh, focusing on this idea of polarities and really this sense that and polarities and polarization are such a huge issue in the kind of political landscape of our world right now. Um, just noticing kind of recent things happening in the UK around Brexit. Um, and the idea of this, what we're looking at this week is polarity mapping, and really the sense that we see polarities in any complex system as a given. They're not something, they're not a problem to be solved, but they're a creative tension to be managed, something that's always going to be there. And so this week you'll find an article and two videos that kind of overview this idea of polarity management and really the tool of polarity mapping. Um, and polarity mapping is a way to kind of really identify this fundamental creative system, creative tension that will be at play in your system, uh, and and start to see them really not as something where we have to really pick a side or decide on one or the other, where we don't have to draw battle lines and get into big conflicts around them, um, but where we can really learn to acknowledge that each side has an upside and a downside, and that we can manage them to maximize the positive benefits of both sides and minimize the kind of negative outcomes of both sides. And so, um, just to make a little clearer by what we mean by polarities, I've kind of drawn a few that I think are really coming up in our discussions and particularly in some of your systems maps. So I think over and over again, um, this question of collaboration versus efficiency has come up in some of your questions. So it's like a lot of what we're offering in this whole series, but particularly in this course, is very exciting. And when you do start to engage your team members in discussions and in ideation, it feels really generative and exciting and full of possibilities. But there's always this sense of like, oh, it took a lot longer. Takes more time than we thought. And what are we going to do with all these ideas? Like it's not necessarily going to efficiently lead to action. And so that sense of it does take more time to engage people, and we also need to be expedient. And it's not that we're going to pick one or the other, it's that we're going to figure out creative and wise ways to manage the both of them. I just picked up on this little theme, particularly, I think, in some of the questions about which tools to use when, but also in some of your discussions about kind of the vulnerability of opening up collaborative decision making, that there's this kind of creative tension around using things that are maybe a little bit more creative, being more authentic and honest about where you are and what's coming up for you. And that coming up against the kind of cultures of professionalism or the sort of cultural norms within your teams. So again, like how vulnerable to be, how much to kind of push the envelope, much to kind of stay with it, color within the lines, and stay within a territory that feels comfortable and safe for people. And again, no right and wrong. I think the next one I'm bringing a lot from Lisa's work around addictions and the opioid crisis, and this real sense of how important it is to really work at the root causes of uprooting um, the addiction epidemic, but also we can't ignore the urgent symptoms and really saving people's lives in the midst of that. And so again, it's a both and, but it's a recognizing that those are both there. And then I think for the systems maps, for Lisa and Fatima, I think there was both a kind of limits to growth, or a limits to growth kind of systems archetype, and this sense of um, there's a real big short-term demand which may require some kind of long-term investment to ultimately overcome, but then there's also risks in the long-term investment, and just knowing that those two things are kind of interplaying and are connected with the one above. I mean, it's a similar dynamic. And then I just kind of as a sort of playful one with Imogen's tidying up her house systems map, there's the ideal and the practical, and those two things are always kind of in a relationship. So this week we're inviting you. The videos are quite short and straightforward. So, and it's great, some really great material this week. So we're inviting you to do your own, to choose a polarity and do your own polarity map. Kind of go through the polarity mapping exercise that's laid out in the materials. And preferably, it would be great to do that with a partner or on a small team, because there's 5 of us. There's going to be a twosome and a threesome if we're able to make it work. So I'm sending out an email, and in the text below, I'm giving you the groups, the suggested groups, and hopefully you can find each other. You can find a time to have a phone call or a video call over the week to do the exercise together. If that's not possible, don't worry. It's totally fine to do it on your own, and it's also totally fine to come to my office hours on Thursday, and we can do it with whoever comes up, or we can even put you in breakout groups while we're there. So. Looking forward to seeing how it goes for you, and to all the rich conversations that I'm sure are going to come this week. Thanks.